The Edgerunners anime was by all means a revival to the Cyberpunk 2077 title, introducing us to David Martinez and the Edgerunners crew who gave us a new Night City legend to reinvigorate us all. During the 10-episode run, we learn a lot about each character's personality and motivations, even bits of their backstories, but for the most part, they remained vague. Until now. Thanks to the Edgerunners mission kit, a new expansion of the tabletop games, we now have new origin stories of each member. So today, I will be covering the untold stories of Maine all the way to Kiwi. This is of course, all thanks to Artazorian for giving me early access to the kit. They're an extremely passionate company and Mike Pondsmith has always put his all into fleshing out the world of Cyberpunk since its inception. I already released a review covering the contents of the kit, so go check that out afterward if you'd like to. As always, please consider subscribing and checking out my various coverage on the Cyberpunk universe, lores and theories alike. Now, we can begin. Who else to start with but the big man himself, the charismatic leader of the Edgerunner crew, Maine. He was born the son of a jazz singer, a woman who traveled around what used to be the lower 48, singing in bars and lounges. Her dream was one of many that drowned in the entertainment industry. Her hope every night, the only thing she cared about, was that some talent scout for a big promoter would hear her and sign her on the spot. A break that many stars before her had been blessed with. Though her time never came, something equally if not more momentous did. The morning after a concert in Portland, Maine, she puked, prompting her to discover that she was pregnant. Her time traveling around didn't allow her much leeway in doing the math and tracking the father. She always made a point of forgetting any lovers she took on, so there wasn't any way of knowing. What she did know though was that she liked Portland, and the state of Maine had always been good to her in small ways, so she decided to settle down. She signed on as a waitress at a local diner and kept at it for a whole 10 years while she raised her son, who she named after the state. Maine was a puny and sickly boy who struggled to get by in the community. On a regular basis, he would get beaten by peers and older kids alike. Maine was becoming sick of always being on the ground, looking up at his attackers, so he promised himself he'd become stronger, bigger and stronger than anyone around. He started with packing on size and strength until he couldn't even be recognized, and picked up fighting in the underground boxing circuit. With his first prize purse, he bought his first bit of chrome, titanium metacarpals and phalanges in his right hand, so as to knock his opponents out on his first solid contact with their jaws. And knock them out he did. After his mama passed away, Maine took jobs as a bouncer at clubs, but he'd rarely stay long at any one place, not with the mincemeat he'd make of the faces of uppity ravers. One night, Maine was provoked by 5 dudes with identical, patriotically themed box cuts. With his size and experience, he slapped them around, not caring who they were. Well, it turned out they were NUSA Spec Ops, and the club, afraid of the consequences, promptly canned Maine. Next day, Maine got a call with a job offer. It was from the NUSA Spec Op. He could let his beast out and get paid for it. Maine figured the math worked out, so he signed without hesitation. It wasn't long before his bravado vanished. It wasn't as simple as beating around some gonk tossing his fist around at you or some noisy punks disturbing the peace. During his service, he watched villages in South America burn one after another, innocents being killed. He just couldn't make sense of it, and after serving 2 years, he took his discharge. A buddy from his unit, Solomon Reed, respected his tenacity and didn't want to let go of a talent like Maine, so he offered work of a different sort, specifically work aimed at building a network of spies in Night City to support the NUSA's Unification War effort. Though Maine turned Solomon down, he did acknowledge that Night City was fertile ground for something, not soldiering, no, but independent contract work. The same position that legends like Johnny Silverhand and Morgan Blackhand found themselves in. And thus, Maine decided to become an Edgerunner and form his own crew. All that's left is the story of how each member joined and their own origin stories. And from there, it's history. Dorio is a veteran Edgerunner and Maine's right-hand crewmate, as well as romantic partner. We previously knew little about her, or how Maine got into contact, but now I can enlighten you. Dorio was born in Iceland, to 2 accomplished athletes as parents. Naturally, Dorio's childhood and youth were a blur, training in gyms, consuming uber-healthy meals, living out of suitcases while traveling from one weightlifting or track meet to the next. Her parents were essentially grooming her to be a world-class athlete. She, like many others, never got to live the life she actually desired, instead being molded by the will of those in her life, just like David Martinez under the wing of Maine. Until that is, Night City turned out to be a stop along the winding path of Dorio. She arrived at NC for a track meet with her family, a West Coast Grand Prix circuit event, and it was this meet that proved transformative for Dorio's pop, though her mom said outright that it had broken him. He emerged as the event's top hammer thrower and collected solid, if not overwhelming, prize money. Then he realized that what he had in hand was peanuts, because he could make so much more by winning a single punch-up on the underground fight circuit run by the Animals. One night, he signed up for one, interested in how it would turn out. It was a hard slog, because anyone vying for membership in the Animals is close to being a world-class athlete in the first place. But as chance would have it, Pops came out on top. The Animals paid out and took him on as a member. Dorio's mom didn't exactly love this. In fact, she didn't like it one bit, but it gave her a comfy life in Night City, so she was complacent. Dorio and her mom could spend their days training and doing whatever they like. The fear and doubt her mom previously held were being quelled. But that mirage would all too soon collapse when a shootout occurred between the Animals and Voodoo Boys, both gangs decked out in heavy weapons. Dorio's pop got caught in full automatic crossfire, the bullets ripping him apart, making nothing but a scrap of his face recognizable just enough to identify him. The family's comfy life came crashing down. But it was never the most important thing. They lived before the Animals, and they could continue living on after. Dorio and her mom lived on modestly and pumped iron day after day. Yet, as it often does for young people, boredom crept in. Dorio's mom had made a conscious decision to be a professional athlete, to sacrifice all else and devote herself. Dorio had not made this decision, and in time she realized it was not the life for her. Then there was this hatred of Night City's gangs, which had begun with her father's death and only festered since. She had a special place in the black corner of her heart for the Animals and Voodoo Boys, but there was really fuck all she could do about it as a weightlifter. She skipped a practice here, a meet there, wandering the city streets instead, looking down many dark alleys, searching for something. She didn't know what just yet. Finally, she bought herself a gun. It seemed organic, the natural thing to do. And then, gun in hand, and her mind honed, she trained her gaze on an animal. It was just some random sucker. Nothing particularly stood out about him besides the affiliation. She observed, she followed, she stalked. A thought began to bud in her mind. This gonk, unaware of Dorio or anything that had happened to her, would die. She would kill him and quench her rising hatred. And so one night, she followed him to a bar. She watched him drink, enough to make her sit and stew in her thoughts for a bit too long for her liking. When he got up to use the john, she followed him there. As he vacated his bladder, back turned, she put the barrel of her gun to his head, but she failed to pull the trigger. A split second later, she was on the floor with a broken nose. The animal stood over her, the barrel of her gun now staring in her face. But he didn't fire either, not for reasons of hesitation, but because just then his brain exploded, looking like pieces of glitter on the wall. Maine had dropped him. Maine, who had been stalking Dorio while she'd been stalking the animal, who now helped her up and said he was looking for peeps for his crew of Edgerunners. This was exactly what Dorio had been looking for, and in that same heartbeat, she signed on. Born in the free state of Texas, Falco's parents owned vast swaths of land that they cultivated in close collaboration with Biotechnica. Being born and raised in the field, Falco was due to take the reins at the farm. But a little secret was his favorite bit of work there involved driving tractors. Not quite as prescribed though. He loved to hit the accelerator and keep it down, sending the big machine zipping across the fields at speeds unimaginable to any other tractor drivers. It wasn't conventional, but it was his thing. It wasn't that his tractors were better or that he tweaked their engines. It was just about having the tenacity to do it. Falco swapped his tractor seat for one in a stock car and began entering races on the local circuit. He turned out to be talented. Not only would he open the throttle wide, he also possessed a cool head that allowed him to smoothly execute even the riskiest moves. Pretty soon, he had conquered the local circuit and began considering a more global perspective of the scene, which took him onto the pro racing circuit. He reigned supreme there as well, albeit too easily. After winning an unprecedented dozen-plus races in a row, he started hankering for a new challenge that wouldn't be so straightforward and by the books. The search for that challenge took him to Night City, where he could street race the craziest drivers from around the world on some of the hardest, most dangerous urban courses in existence. He didn't always win, and he liked that. Yet he was among the best, chalking up night race wins against NC's racing greats, Jeremy Taylor and Rear View, the latter being who got him his first paid gig. He collected a couple of Edgerunners, and together they pulled a heist at an orbital air warehouse. The crowd at the Afterlife got to know and like Falco, and he came around to liking the kind of tension that came with gigs he got from fixers. It was a satisfying life, and he mostly dropped racing, only hitting the occasional course as a special guest. It's only after being pushed onto the radar of Arasaka Militech post David's demise that he begins reconsidering his time in Night City. After tying up loose ends and making sure he has his valuables, including multiple mementos of his recently departed friends, he heads south, leaving Night City and the Edgerunners within to form their own upcoming legends. For as far back as Kiwi can remember, she has no recollection of her parents. The unfortunate, likely matter of fact being when she was not much older than a toddler, she was sold to a corp factory where her small hands proved useful in the production of implant sub-assemblies. She worked alongside other kids and machines in the harsh laborious setting, the only semblance of a friendship being the factory foreman who took a liking to her. He protected her, helped her when she needed it, and overall just befriended her. When the time was appropriate, he had promoted her, gave her raises, and ensured some level of comfort, all while doing so under the guise of goodwill. But nothing is free in Night City. The time came for payback. He propositioned her, framing it as a debt Kiwi owed. When she refused, the foreman sold her off to a den of iniquity. Her tech knowledge from the factory and savviness about sub-assemblies, microcontrollers, and shards helped her survive the next 2 years, but not in the best of conditions. She built a gizmo that inured her to sensations and cut off all emotional responses to the work she had to do. 2 years in, a brutish client used his gorilla arms to tear away a part of her jaw. She concluded she would not have it reconstructed. She was done with her jaw, and the cat house as well. Kiwi had been a quick learner for as long as she could remember. So, while recovering from her encounter with the gorilla arms, she delved into net running. She found it satisfyingly challenging, which kept her motivated. Soon, she would use her newly acquired abilities to cause multiple short circuits at both the cat house and her old factory, causing both buildings to burn down completely, with the proprietor and foreman inside, of course. With all accounts now settled and a mask covering the lower half of her face, Kiwi decided to embark on a new life path. She headed off for Night City, where she took on small net running gigs. Then, she met Rebecca, who in turn brought Kiwi into Maine's Edgerunner crew. Though 2 major factors prevented her from blending in with the group, she was always the one standing off on her own. The previous trauma she had endured had prevented her from forming any trust or familial bonds with another person, and the fact she had been a replacement for a netrunner before her that had been killed in an op against Biotechnica. Kiwi would live her entire life not forming a single true friendship. Pilar is the big bro of Becca's, and their dad is an Edgerunner known as Papa Sunrise. It was Papa Sunrise who inspired Pilar and trained him in his early years. Pilar took some hard shots, and it pained his dad to see, but they stayed the course. But suddenly, his father up and disappeared. But someone that impressive, well, no way he went down easy. No way it was even fair. Pilar was easily the biggest fan of his father, and saw him as nothing short of amazing. Pilar fervently believed his dad was dropped and dissolved. He pledged to find the killers and to murder them in ways even worse than what they could have done to his father. But first and foremost, he had his little sister to take care of. This wasn't an easy task by any means, made only harsher by the life their father had left behind for them. The family's pad was quickly repossessed to settle Papa Sunrise's alleged gambling debts, and the eddies from the family account evaporated mysteriously. So Pilar and his sister hit the streets to live there in their dad's broken down car. Pilar promised Rebecca he'd get them off the streets fast, no matter what. He just showed the town just how solid a merc he is. He'd be a well-known Edgerunner in days, well, maybe weeks. if we're being generous. But some, or even most of his dad's friends and acquaintances, turned their backs on the kids. Only a few, especially Wakako, who Pilar called Auntie, proved willing to help, giving him gigs and recommending him to others. Still, the going was tough. Something always seemed to get in the way of bagging the big score. After a while, Pilar realized what his problem was. It was his chaotic sister, Becca. She was sinking every mission they went on. He needed help to rein her in, so he signed on with Maine and his Edgerunner crew. Finally, he was on the path to realizing his dream of becoming a Night City legend. Night City, born and bred, Becca's a true daughter of the town, having ventured outside city limits a whopping 2 times in total. She is the daughter of NC royalty. Her father, Papa Sunrise, was one of the city's best-known Edgerunners, until he suddenly vanished, as if the ground had opened beneath him and swallowed him whole. Now orphans, Becca and her big bro were forced to fend for themselves in the big city. Their mother was already long gone, vanished when Rebecca was a mere 6 years of age. Papa Sunrise never liked to talk about her, except to admonish Becca for being just like her mom. Emotional, unpredictable, and just too compassionate. That was Rebecca in a nutshell, and it certainly harmed her budding career as an Edgerunner. For example, she was once late to an important meetup with Wakako because she stood up for a defenseless waitress accosted by a crew of animals. On another, she just had to stop and cuddle a painfully cute pup, thus garnering the attention of a group of passing scavs. Another time, instead of blowing a target's brains out, she spared him and took him home, giving him a roof over his head. "Had such sad eyes, the poor gonk," she said. Papa Sunrise always believed that Becca's zaniness and her excessive compassion could lead her to an early grave, and those traits formed a rift between her and her brother as they embarked on their edge-running careers. For a time, Rebecca wasn't even sure she wanted to be an edgerunner. She spent months soul-searching, and for a minute there, she was leaning towards a no. But with perfect timing, Pilar introduced her to Maine, and the rest is history, though she never quite overcame that emotional side of her. Sasha is the original netrunner of Maine's crew, later being replaced by Kiwi. She isn't mentioned in the Edgerunners anime, as her story is confined to that of the Let You Down music video, though there's plenty to take away from it and the appearance of her sister Stella Ramos in Phantom Liberty. Sasha was the daughter of Galina Valieva. Her mother died when she was a child as a result of the crippling and fatal side effects of Biotechnica painkillers, specifically Securacine. In adulthood, Sasha became a part of Maine's crew of Edgerunners as a netrunner. One night, after getting drinks in the afterlife, her crew was hired to infiltrate Biotechnica's Night City HQ to extract secret financial records on Chu 2 and information on a new immunosuppressant prototype. After Maine set up a jammer on the building's communications, Sasha infiltrated the facility. After getting the information she was after, Sasha discovered confidential files on Securacine, the painkillers her mother used while she was sick. The main side effect of the painkiller included gradual neurodegeneration, and despite this being known, Biotechnica decided that the drug was just too profitable and couldn't be pulled from the market. Sasha, determined to do right by her mother, started to upload the entire Securacine database to the Network 54 news tip line. The communications jammer hadn't been set to last for this prolonged mission though, and Sasha was discovered, prompting a group of Biotechnica security robots to home in on her location. She locked the door and prepared a set of explosives. Maine tried to contact her, but knowing she wasn't going to make it out, Sasha cut off the connection line with her crew. Once the security breached the door, Sasha held down the line while making sure that information got sent. Although she managed to complete the upload, Sasha got shot through the window, and the explosives she had set got activated, destroying the office she was in. Maine found her body after caving in the roof of a pedestrian's vehicle. Her death had revealed the disturbing fate of her mother and many other victims to the public, but Biotechnica remained. Speaking of a car roof being crushed, we find ourselves at a bonus biography, the backstory of Atom Smasher. While his story has been well documented, even on my channel, this is a to-the-point summary that even has an interesting theory near the end, so I doubt you want to miss it. The truth is, we don't know much about Atom Smasher in terms of a complete biography. After all, he's been alive for nearly a century, and any story we tell would probably be more legend than truth, not to mention the long gaps in time that leave behind nothing but rumors. According to an article he wrote for Solo of Fortune back in the 2020s, he was born and raised in New York, where he led a combat gang before enlisting in the military. Adam spent 6 years in the Marine Corps before they kicked him out. Afterwards, he went full Edgerunner, specializing in nasty and destructive jobs. A couple of rocket-propelled grenades ended that career, but began another when Arasaka found him, stuffed his brain into a Borg body, and signed him to a lifelong contract. We know Adam was active up to and during the Fourth Corporate War. He specialized and took joy in leading strike forces to slaughter communities full of not only enemies, but their families as well. Rumors place him in Arasaka's Night City HQ when the nuke went off, in a duel against Militech's legendary Morgan Blackhand. A clash of ideologies. If so, the metal bastard survived the blast and fell off the radar, the decades following being nothing but stories of an unstoppable metal juggernaut running ops around the globe. How much is true remains a mystery to this day. All we know for sure is he's currently back in Night City after years away, or someone claiming to be him is. Maybe the real Atom Smasher died during the nuke, and Arasaka brainwashed some poor full-body conversion, or multiple, into believing he's the genuine article. Weirder things have happened after all. At least, this is the idea our Talzorian is teasing at. I mean, who's to say how he returned? Soul killer, brainwashing, using full-body conversions as dolls? Who's to say, other than Mike Pondsmith himself? We know a lot about David Martinez. Hell, we have an entire anime about him. But what we don't already know is the story of his parents and his early life. The journey of his mother and father can only be compared to the likes of those old rom-coms. A big city, a man, and a woman walking down the street. The woman suddenly stops due to a contraction, a big one that knocks the wind out of her. The guy flags down the first available cab. He and the woman clumsily tumble into the back seat, and the cab speeds off for the hospital. David Martinez came into the world in somewhat similar circumstances, kind of. David's mom, an EMT named Gloria, felt her water break while she's in the back of her speeding ambulance, trying to reattach the arm of an Edgerunner who had gotten it shut off. Yep, this scenario is very romantic. It's actually comparable to Shakespeare if you ask me. That guy was a freak. So she sutured, and got it done, all while fighting against her own body. Finally, she told the Edgerunner to swap seats with her and proceeded to deliver her own baby on the gurney, all while the ambulance was still speeding towards a hospital. The Edgerunner alongside her cut the umbilical cord using the mantis blade in the arm Gloria had just salvaged. Brutal, yet somehow poetic. It was at that moment that Gloria and David were bonded in awareness that she would do absolutely anything for him, and he would never let her down. Life in Santo Domingo certainly wouldn't be a rose garden. The exact opposite, actually. But they had each other. Trash, filth, dwarfers, psychos, and death at every corner. Gloria did her damnedest to shelter David from all manner of danger. Thing is, David just never liked the peaceful, mundane side of life. It bored him out of his skull. Yeah, David liked to have lots going on, liked it when shit went down, because as long as he could remember, he had the feeling he was destined for something bigger. Clearly a consequence of his absurd birth. So he scoped and kept tabs on anyone and everyone in and around Mega Building H4, and any Edgerunner he'd not seen before, David would talk his ear off. Soon as the local Ripper Doc had new chrome, you bet David would be in his clinic, ogling it. With all that curiosity bursting out of him, there'd be times he'd get his ass kicked too. But the curiosity wouldn't die, and David never thought to curb it. This one time, the son of a 6th Street gang goon, while pissed off at David, found him, pinned him down, and started punching away. He kept punching until he finally broke his own hand, and promptly started wailing like a little bitch with everybody watching. David, covered in blood, his own and theirs, laughed all the way through the beating and for an hour after it, which pretty much meant no one in the hood would touch David ever again. And David was reassured that he was special, that he would do great things in life. He'd keep that bigger than life attitude all the way up to his death in a blaze of glory. Born in Warsaw to a Polish-Japanese family, Lucy's father, Takeshi Kushinada, was a veteran of the Fourth Corporate War. When hostilities ended, he was assigned to the Arasaka garrison in Warsaw. Her mother, Shimmer, a member of a gang of Polish netrunners called 404 Squadron, dropped the underground life after meeting Takeshi, falling in love and starting a family with him. Lucy's childhood was positively idyllic. She attended the best schools, and she and her family lacked for nothing. Traveled frequently, and while home, enjoyed a spacious villa and garden in a luxury-gated Arasaka community near Warsaw's northeastern city limits. The first blemish of their family bliss appeared when 7-year-old Lucy hacked into her dad's computer and found info of his quote-unquote achievements during the Fourth Corporate War. What she saw shocked her. She knew him as a wondrous father, but the files proved him to be a brutal beast, a monster who happily murdered mercilessly whenever his superiors ordered him to. The revelation planted something sour in Lucy's chest, a stinging, a burning that commanded her to rebel, to run away from home, and to spend more and more time on the net. She proved to have a talent for net running of the highest order. Her father, after recovering her from her latest adventure, decided to couple this talent with her penchant for running away. He forced his daughter to take a skills test at Arasaka, after which she was promptly assigned to the Corps Netrunner outfit. Lucy's task was recovering old, lost, or archived info and data resting somewhere in the depths of the old net. Arasaka was drooling for info of the sort, as it was all blocked off by the black wall. But as time went on, kids from Lucy's division started dying, dropping like flies. And Lucy, once again, decided to run. She made it out, but thought it best not to go home, fearing what her father would do if she returned. Instead, Lucy skipped across to Europe, sometimes trying to settle down. Only whenever Lucy dared to rest, she could sense her mother, who had rejoined 404 Squadron, zeroing in on her. Uncertain of her mother's intentions, Lucy packed up and fled, again and again and again, until she finally found herself on the other side of the Atlantic. After roaming a good number of states, Lucy wound up in Night City, thinking that no place on Earth was destined to be her safe harbor. So she promised herself she'd amass the funds needed to flee to Luna. She started with petty thefts, rarely, if ever, training her sights on fatter loot. Until that is, she met Kiwi, another netrunner who gently folded Lucy into Maine's crew, where she would remain until David succeeded in his mission to send her to the moon. And that, chooms, are all the new stories we have on the Edgerunners crew. Let me know what you think about the untold origins of each member, and which one was the most interesting to you. Personally, I'd have to say Maine's was my favorite, just because of how much he had got around. I certainly didn't expect him to have known Solomon Reed. Again, a huge thanks to Artalzorian and their media ambassador Rob for giving me access to the kit. It was a pleasure working on these videos and has been a long-time goal of mine. As always, another huge thanks to my channel members up on screen. I always appreciate the support, and I hope you continue to enjoy. Please remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, or dislike if you didn't. Make sure to have a great week, and I will see you later, chooms.